Awesome. Well, thank you guys. I'm so excited to be here today. It's been such an inspiring morning and afternoon, and hearing story and conversation one after the other about how we can change the culture of sport for youth, I think is just such an empowering conversation. You know, in the video, I talked about this quote my dad always shared with my sisters and I, and it is a huge part of who I am still to this day, but growing up, we always heard those words. Every single night when my mom and dad tucked us into bed, we'd hear my dad tell us, "You are the best, you can make a difference, and you can change the world." And to grow up and have people in your life that believe in you that much, and not only believe in you that much, but vocalize it every day, no matter what happens, no matter how good or bad the day may be, but to tell you that you are the best, that believe in you enough to tell you that you can make a difference and you can change the world, that is something every single kid deserves. Whether it's from a parent, a coach, a mentor, I don't care who that comes from, but every child deserves that opportunity. You know, for me growing up, I had the privilege of being involved in sport. It wasn't a question of or conversation of access. It was more of a question of which sport. I started in sports as a very young girl. I played co-ed soccer. That's a thing I think when you're like 5 years old maybe. I'm not very good with hand-eye coordination or foot-eye coordination for that matter, so I ended up in a pool by the age of 7 and started swimming competitively. I had always been a swimmer from that point on. That was my sport. Baby of 3 girls, my sisters swam, so naturally I swam. But it wasn't a question. It was an opportunity that we had the privilege to have. Not everybody is that lucky though. Not every child has that opportunity. Not every child grows up in a family that has the financial means to provide them with that, or a community that has access to that. When I was in elementary school, we had physical education 5 days a week, every single day. We learned how to play every single sport you can imagine. That was part of my upbringing. But what I learned through sport, it wasn't as much about how to get myself from point A to point B in the swimming pool and up and down the black line, as it was about life. Those intangible values that travel with you. I don't think it was until I turned 18, 6 months later, when I became paralyzed, that I truly, fully understood the magnitude of the lessons that that black line taught me every day for the previous 11 years of my life. For me, swimming and sport became my safe haven in a time when I needed it most. After my injury happened in 2008, my future looked very bleak. I didn't know what hoping or dreaming looked like. I was still trying to figure out what living looked like. Within 2.5 months of my injury, I found my way back to that black line. Swimming saved me in every way imaginable after I was injured. Sport brought me back to life. When I was in high school and I swam, you know, it's funny, I was varsity all 4 years, but I didn't make it to state. I wasn't on the Division I route. When I became injured and I found that black line though, something clicked, something changed. I trained for 4 years. I ended up in London at the 2012 Paralympic Games, where I came home a gold and bronze medalist, and I continued on for Rio. But swimming is about so much more than the medals, more than the accolades, the records, any of that. It's even more about those values. It's about that connection that you feel to something. That's what sport gives so many, feeling that they are part of a community, something bigger than themselves, and no matter what happens in life, they always have something that they can turn to. Whether it be a black line, a soccer field, or a basketball court. The power of sport is something that you can never underestimate. But what I've learned through my Paralympic journey is that by creating a more inclusive environment on the field of play, we create a more inclusive society as a whole. The more we have inclusion on the field of play, the more that inclusion transfers to the classroom, to the workplace, to our communities. I'm still swimming, but I dream of the day where we no longer have adaptive sports and non-adaptive sport, but we just have sport. Sport shouldn't have racial barriers, it shouldn't have financial barriers, and it should not have barriers based on ability levels. If a young girl or boy wants to play soccer on that co-ed soccer team that you have around 4, 5, 6 years old, I want to see every player on that field ability, regardless of what it may be. I want to see inclusion on our teams, not segregation. I want to see that come together so we can have a more inclusive society in the years to come. Because the kids that are on our field of play right now, our youth of today, they are our leaders of tomorrow, and if we do not invest in them, we are missing a huge opportunity. So how do we allow sports to change perception in our society? How do we allow the power of sports to change perception of what inclusion looks like? I now live in this bubble of the disability community, and I knew nothing about what it looked like when I was 18 years old and injured. Not a thing. I didn't know disability sport existed. I knew nothing about the Paralympic Games until about 2.5 months, after my injury occurred. And when I learned about it, I was in awe. Obviously, it's become a part of who I am. It's a world I live in every single day. But I also know what my life before looked like. And I dream of the day when there's no more two worlds. It is just one. I dream of the day where we can watch sport serve as our catalyst to transcend the field of play and come into our communities and change perception of what disability looks like, of what inclusion looks like, and of what is possible. The beauty of sport is that playing for all, it is possible. We all have that ability to make a difference and to change the world, and I believe sport is our catalyst for that. Sport is how we do just that. My dad was a pretty wise guy, I think. I'm the baby of 3 girls, so I think that makes me a total daddy's girl at this point, even at 28. But those words are something that every single child deserves to hear. They are something that every adolescent deserves to hear, and they are something that every single adult in this room can share. Those words are something we can all choose to live by giving our best, by being our best, not just for ourselves, but for the next generation. And by choosing every single day to make a difference and change the world in our communities by giving greater access for the youth of today. Thank you so incredibly much, and please always remember those words. You are the best, you can make a difference, and you can change our world. Thank you.